Turbo and 2K show.
What is up, 2K crew? Yes, it is that time of the week again, and I'm super excited because, as you guys and gals know, we didn't have a show last week. It was, we celebrated the holiday, even though it was after Christmas, after New Year's, but something, just need a little time with the fam. Hope you guys and gals understand, and I kind of wanted to wait till this week because we have a little bit more to talk about instead of speculation over what was going to happen Thursday and Friday. And boy, oh boy, Thursday and Friday were absolutely amazing. Cannot wait to get into that. But first, before we get started, I want to say thank you to everyone watching over on Twitter, over on our Facebook group, over on our YouTube channel, over on Twitter or TikTok, excuse me. For those of you that are watching, give us a follow, give us a subscription, drop us a like, a comment. If you're on YouTube, go ahead and hit the bell so you get notified every time we go live. And for the OGs that are our audio audience, you guys and gals are the absolute best. You invite us in to help your drive to work or on the treadmill or however you consume your podcast. Look us up there, give us a like, give us a follow as well. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we got a lot to talk about, not a lot of time. So let's get this party started. We got some news. I know the vast majority of the news came from the games Thursday and Friday, and eventually, the Notre Dame game was played after on Friday, I believe. So it is what it is. It is what it is. Most of the news is going to come from that, but there was some that arose today, as well as some other things I do want to tie a bow on. But first and foremost, as you can see, 2Ks is not with us again this week. I was going to try and like AJ Hawk cam him in and just flat ran out of time. That's on me. Hand up. That's on me. But one other thing I did want to get in front of, so I did not forget, we did have a couple birthdays in the 2K crew. And if you don't know what the 2K crew is, facebook.com/group/2K crew. Probably the coolest, sports talk podcast group on Facebook. So head on over there. It's free to join. First and foremost, happy birthday, Mrs. 2Ks. Happy birthday. Happy birthday, Kyler Thornburg, one of the OG 2K crew, as well as Nanette Pauly. Lots of birthdays here in the 2K crew, and I don't shout out everyone's birthday, just the ones that have either been riding and dying with us for since day one, or that are close personal friends. But yeah, that's the main, not the main news. But one other piece of news that I did want to get in front of here, and I do have a slide for those of you that do not know, LeBron James has passed Michael Jordan in number of 30-point games. And Samantha over on Twitter, Samantha_SN1 says, won the scoring title, won MVP, was first team all defense, led playoffs in scoring, won finals MVP, all in the same season. This has only happened 4 times in NBA history, and all 4 times it was done by Michael Jordan. Miss me with the LeBron needing 450 more games to tie Jordan's 30-point games record. That is not an accomplishment. Jordan is and always will be the GOAT. Now, I didn't bring this up to start a whole who's better, LeBron versus MJ conversation, but there's a lot of people that, especially that are our age, that do remember watching Michael Jordan live, that LeBron is cool. I have nothing against LeBron. He's a very talented player. However, when it comes to grit, nastiness, toughness, scoring, and revolutionizing America, that's Michael Jordan, ladies and gentlemen. That's Michael Jordan. So for those of you that don't know, like I said, he did pass. He not only tied, but I believe the next night actually passed Jordan for the most 30-point games in NBA history, which he kind of should have, because LeBron is the scoring champion. He has the most points out of anyone in NBA history, so it just kind of makes sense that he would have that. However, and I should have grabbed the tweet that said Michael has like 100 and these aren't exact quotes, but it's kind of similar. Like 150 40-point games, and LeBron has like 45. So it's definitely a huge disparity when it comes to that. But like I said, the point of the show is not to discuss LeBron versus Jordan, but some NBA news that came in later in the day that I didn't have time to make slides for. Let's start off with the kind of the big news, kind of the surprising news. The Patriots fired Gerard Mayo. I mean, they didn't even wait till Black Monday. They said, you know what, dude? Not only are we losing all of these games? On top of that, you win the last game, which you're supposed to lose. The Bills were not playing anybody, which didn't help matters any, but you're supposed to lose this game and we get the number 1 overall draft pick. Well, I completely understand these guys are professional athletes. Losing really isn't in their DNA, but it's kind of maybe the straw that broke the camel's back type deal, because after the Pats lost, they went from the number 1 overall pick to the 4th pick. And yeah, they will be headed up by someone other than Gerard Mayo in the 2025 season. Another late note here, Mike Evans gets his 11th straight 1,000-yard season, tying Jerry Rice's record. You can put an asterisk by it if you want to, because now we're playing one more game. I'd say we, like I'm actually on the field, but they are playing one more game as compared to when Jerry was doing it. Kind of the whole, if Saquon would have went today and had over 101 yards rushing, he would have passed Eric Dickerson for the rushing title. However, with one additional game. So, like I said, this isn't the point of this is not the point of this show. Just want to throw that out. And the Bears shock the Patriots. And if you follow Annie Agar on either Twitter, TikTok, any of her socials, someone please check on her, please. I think she might be losing it as we speak right now. So give this show just a little time out. Go check on Annie. Make sure she's okay, because the world is a better place with her NFL week whatever meetings. Love those. Absolutely love them. But like I mentioned, the NFL draft order is now set. I grabbed at least the top 10. Titans, Browns, Giants, Pats, Jags, Jets, Raiders, Panthers, Saints, and Bears. Now, this is gonna be the fun part, 2K crew, is now that we have the top 10 set, where does Shedeur go? Where does Cam Ward go? Where are all these guys going to land? And is it, when it comes to Shedeur in particular, if the Browns draft him, is he going to pull an Eli Manning? I mean, if I was him, I would. If I was any player that the Browns were going to draft, nope. If you draft me, you better plan on trading me, because I am not getting drafted into that just cesspool of an organization. Nope, count me out. So I have a very good feeling that I'm not saying a trade will happen, but I have a feeling that Shedeur and Dion will be having a conversation with the Browns ownership. But yeah, that's all the news that I have, 2K crew. Let me double check here. All right, let's jump into the first. Well, let's actually jump into the, before we dive into the games. You know, I did put out the show title, description, and the thumbnail saying, "Is the SEC done? Is the SEC done?" And for those of you that were with me before we went live over on TikTok, I kind of let a little bit of this out of the bag and saying that, you know, let's say for the last 15 years, it's been SEC, maybe a squeaker in there, SEC, that has pretty much dominated, like I said, for like the past 15 years. And I know there's been a lot of what ifs, a lot of, well, this is the reason why. So let's take a step back and let's kind of unpack these, if you will. I do find it odd that once Nick Saban steps down, I'm not sitting here saying that the whole conference went down the shitter. I'm not saying that. I'm not here to say that. I'm not saying that, because if you see, the SEC does have a representative in the Final Four. However, if you talk to a lot of SEC fans, they don't acknowledge really that Texas is an SEC school yet. So which SEC fans, which is it? You know, are you claiming them now that they're in the that they're in the Final Four, because going into the playoffs, you're like, nope, Texas is not an SEC style team. They don't have an SEC defense. They don't have this. They don't have that. They're just the new guys on the block. And furthermore, they haven't played anybody. And the only team that they've played that is worth anything, they've lost to twice in Georgia. So, okay, what is it? Who are they? And you look at that Georgia team. Almost didn't make the playoffs. I know they won the SEC title game, but let's say they didn't. Yes, they probably would have still been in the playoffs, but a much lower seed. And do you think they could have won the first round game to get to where, or in the second round game to get to where Texas is at? I don't believe so. I don't believe so at all. And for those of you arguing that Alabama should have been in. Alabama got their doors blown off by a Michigan team. Now hold on. Before you come at me with all these transfers and everything else, and announcing for the draft all these players for Alabama, look at all the injured ones for Michigan. Look at that. And so I'm not accepting that as an excuse. I'm not accepting that as a reason why Alabama lost. Get out of here with that. And if you look back, a lot of these players that Michigan was without during the Alabama game, they were also without for the Ohio State game. Now, I'm not trying to pump Michigan's tires here. I'm just giving you some background on, for those of you that are going to come at me and say, Alabama definitely does deserve to be in. No, sorry. If you look at, Lane Kiffin, Ole Miss, those boys put on a fucking show. They put on a show. But here's the thing, Lane. Here's the thing, SEC. If you could do that to that team, why didn't you do that during the regular season and get one more win and make the playoffs legitimately, instead of sitting here bitching about it? Why? Because no one gives a shit about bowl games besides you. You were trying to make a point. You were trying to make a point to say we deserve to we deserve to be in the playoffs. We deserve to bang with the big boys, even though we have 3 losses, where there's not a single 3-loss team other than Clemson in the playoffs. And for South Carolina, you guys laid an egg too. So I don't want to hear it. I do not want to hear it. Now here's one theory. Here's one theory that I think a lot of people are running with. I'm not so sure if I agree with it, so let's try to unpack it together, 2K crew. Is this right here. This is from Brandon Walker over on Twitter. He's a Barstool guy at BFDub. I must say that it's interesting that the fall of the SEC's dominance, the fall of Alabama and Georgia coming back to normal, all happened as soon as every team could start legally paying players. Now, like I said, I'm not buying into that 100%. All I'm saying is that, do I think it's a combination of everyone? Now, we all love Shane Gillis, okay? And if you don't know what I'm referring to, go back to the game day that he was on when they were in South Bend here a couple weeks ago. And he was basically making fun of Nick Saban because now everyone can pay players, not just him. So it is what it is. Do I think this has something to do with it? I do. Do I think it's the only reason? No. No. I think being able to pay players, now everybody can. Add to that the ease of transfer. The transfer portal has made it extremely easy for these players that are either unhappy with their situation, unhappy with their playing time. Where if you look back to what made Nick Saban great, is somehow he could keep 4- and 5-star players 3 deep in the rotation. So then once the starter declares for the draft and gets drafted, number 2 becomes number 1, number 3 becomes number 2, and so on. That's not happening now. That at all is not happening. Why? Because, okay, I can be a number 2 at an Alabama and get a little taste of the NIL, or I could go to Team B, who's say in the Big Ten, the ACC, be a starter, and get more NIL money. It's not so much about the program. I shouldn't say that, because there are some teams that it absolutely is about the program. But that's what's going on. That's what's creating this parity in college football, and I for one love it. You know, I've never been a huge SEC fan, nor have I been an SEC hater. There have been years that I've rooted for Georgia and thought Georgia was the best team in the country. I have rooted for Alabama because they were legitimately the best team in the country. Was I rooting for Alabama when they dog walked Notre Dame? Nope. Can't say that I was. But add to that and the fatigue of seeing the same people win over and over and over and over again, a la a ton of excuse me, a la the Chiefs now. Before that, Tom Brady and the Patriots. Just it kind of runs old, and I think that for me that's what drove the I'm not going to say anti-SEC, but trying to root for someone else. I guess is my point. So is the SEC dead? I think ultimately my answer is going to be no. No, the SEC is not dead. I think the SEC is where they once were the elite of elite. Now they're back down with the rest of the crew. And I honestly think that the Big Ten has taken, I'm not going to say taken over the elite of elite yet, but it's trending that way. There's 2 Big Ten schools in the Final Four, and one of them was the 3rd or 4th best team in the Big Ten, which we talked about last time about the whole seeding and everything. Yes, they did have the easiest route into the quarterfinals. That's neither here nor there. Let's just put that aside. We've talked about that, and let's move forward. Speaking of moving forward, let's talk about the games. All right, first up I have Ohio State, Oregon. Ohio State, Oregon. This wasn't much of a game, guys and gals. This was not much of a game. If you guys were with me 2 weeks ago, I told you that this ended up not being much of a game. But I was way wrong, because I thought Texas was going to dog walk Arizona State. I thought Penn State was going to dog walk Boise. They kind of did. And we were going to have 2 good games. Ohio State, Oregon, Notre Dame, Georgia. Well, we were half right. This Oregon-Ohio State game was... it was 34-8 at halftime. I mean, this game was done. It was 14-0 after the first quarter. And for those of you that took the over on Will Howard passing yards, Jeremiah Smith receiving yards, and Abuka's reception number of receptions, man, oh man, you made a lot of money. And the main takeaway here is, even going into this game, Ohio State was even after the loss to Michigan, which we went through last week, this team was the hottest team in college football. I mean, the beatdown that they put on Tennessee was that was belt to ass. That was a beatdown. I mean, you could not have, you can't describe a beatdown any further than that. And myself wondering, even though I picked Ohio State to beat Oregon, I didn't think it was going to be this. I kind of thought they would come back down to earth after the Tennessee game, but they just kept going. They kept going and going and going. And ever since Chip Kelly has remembered that number 4 is on his team, oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I made in one of my group chats, I'm like, man, this Jeremiah Smith kid is incredible. And one of my boys texted back, he goes, well, I think everyone can when they're not even being covered, which is true. It's like they just decided not to cover the best wide receiver in college football. And I'm sure everyone's getting just totally blind to the fact that, yes, he is 19 years old. He cannot, he's not draft eligible for 2 more years. 2 more years. So if you're a defensive back in the Big Ten, you get to deal with him for 2 more years, which is insane to think about. Is absolutely insane to think about. Just kind of give you some numbers here. Will Howard was 17 of 26, 319 yards, 3 touchdowns, clean on the picks. Dylan Gabriel, 29 of 41, 299, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. And the main thing, the main takeaway, aside from Jeremiah Smith being an absolute alien, is that Ohio State's front is them boys are dogs. Because Dylan Gabriel could not, especially in the first half, could not get his footing, could not find comfort in the pocket, and was just being terrorized the entire game. Let's see, how many sacks did they have? They had 8 sacks. Ohio State had 8 sacks to none. 8 to none. So add to that the 8 sacks to none. That is incredible. That is absolutely incredible. But I'm glad that the Gabriel actually found a little bit coming in, out of the second quarter into the third quarter, gained a little bit of moxie, gained a little bit of confidence, and we saw this Ducks team move the ball with a little bit more frequency after that first quarter, because you're up 14-0, all of a sudden you get smacked in the mouth, and especially with this Ohio State offense. I mean, Travion Henderson had 94 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns. Judkins had 85 yards rushing. This team was unbelievable. Unbelievable. And while I'm thinking about it, there was an obvious trend that I just kind of glazed over before we started talking, is the teams with the byes were 0-4. 0-4. I mean, granted, we had an Arizona State team that a lot of folks, if the committee fixes the problem, like we talked about 2 weeks ago, Arizona State would not be having this bye. Oregon would. You could argue that Georgia would, but Boise and Arizona State would not have these byes. So it's hard for me to say that the byes are, the rust was there. I'm not so sure if I buy that. I'm not so sure if I buy that, simply because even in the 4-team playoff, there was that, 2 to 3 week break. It always seemed to line up the national championship game. So like I said, I'm not so sure I buy that. Now, had this been the 1, 2, 3, 4, like we talked about 2 weeks ago, and we had other more worthy teams rather than Boise State and Arizona State, and then they all went 0-4. Now we have a trend. Now we have a conversation to where I think I could get behind. But I'm not saying I don't buy it. I'm just saying I think this was kind of a fluky year. I need some more data. Especially after they fix this seeding shit. But yeah, that was an Ohio State team that was on a mission, was absolutely looking to destroy whichever team stepped on the field, regardless of if they were the number 1 team. And now, mind you, this is the same Oregon team that beat Ohio State in the regular season, albeit Ohio State was they almost got to kick a field goal to win the game. So keep that in mind. But yeah, that was an absolute drubbing. Ohio State is a wagon. That's about the best thing I can do to describe them. So let's move to the Texas ASU. We kind of talked about it a little bit here, but by far this has been the best game of the playoffs so far. For those of you that wanted, great games, close games, this one didn't start out like that. This one didn't start out like that at all. However, we go to two overtimes. And if I'm almost positive with this game, Texas goes up 14-0 in the blink of an eye. They have like a punt return, and then 2 plays later they score again. So they have 14 points in 2 plays, essentially. How would the Sun Devils reply? Well, it was 17-3 at half. 17-3 at half, and there was a lot of people wondering where Cam Scatterbo was. He, in the first half, was very pedestrian, just really didn't look like himself, getting bottled up by that Texas defense. And then all of a sudden, this dude goes nuts. And out of any player in this whole playoff, I was most excited about him because we really didn't start to hear about him until later, once, into the Big 12 playoff game, and he had a hell of a game there. And then we had to wait, 3 weeks to watch him again. But this dude's a bowling ball. I mean, he is an absolute bowling ball. I would hate to be hit by him. His quads are about the size of my waist, and just a dude, just an absolute dude is pretty much the best way I can describe it. And he ends up with 30 carries, 143 yards, and 2 touchdowns. But it doesn't stop there. He had 8 catches for 99 yards, and he threw a 42-yard touchdown pass, which he checked to. That's insane. That is absolutely insane. Now, there were rumors because he puked on the sideline, and what was he doing the night prior because it was New Year's Eve, and he's like, no, I ate something. Once that something got out of me, I was a whole new person. That's kind of why you saw, kind of the switch flip after that. But this dude's an absolute dog. And sure as shit, right after the game, everyone's like, all right, well, it's cool to see him, but he's going to be shit in the NFL. I don't believe that one bit. You look at all of the random ass running backs that we see on a week in and week out basis in the NFL. This dude could not only be one of those quote unquote random guys, but earn a spot in one of these rotations. I have absolutely no doubt in my mind that could happen. The only thing that's kind of against Cam right now is it's a very deep wide receiver draft. Would you take him over Genty? I don't know. 2 very different skill sets. But it's going to make for a lot of cool arguments, or I should say discussions. Well, let's take a peek at some of the numbers here. Quinn Ewers, 20 of 30, 322 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a pick. Sam Levitt, 24 of 46, 222 yards, and a pick. That Levitt kid was fun to watch. He was fun to watch. The thing is that I can't really understand, and I was listening to the SV pod, it was either yesterday or today, and SVP and Stanford Steve, I believe it was Stanford Steve, said, he hit the nail right on the head with this. I always want more from that Texas offense. And if you look at it, they scored 3 touchdowns, and 2 of those were in overtime. So during the first 4 quarters, they scored 2 touchdowns, one of which was 2 plays into the game, or two of their plays into the game. I need more from Quinn Ewers. I need more from that offense. Even though Matthew Golden had 7 catches, 179 yards and a touchdown, Gunnar Helm had 3 catches, 56 yards and a touchdown. With the coaching staff that's there, the quote unquote, offensive guru in Sark, I need more. I need more. This should not have been a game. Big shout out to to ASU for making this a game, and shout out to their coach who made the adjustment to get them back into the game. I believe the coach is 37 years old. How awesome is that? But yeah, like I said, they had 17-3. They had ASU on the ropes at halftime. And they had some weird fluky safety, and that the fourth quarter just did not go Texas's way defensively or offensively. So, like I said, big shout out to ASU, but in a Texas team, I need more from you. And especially moving forward against this just wagon of a team in Ohio State. Texas, if you want to move on in this playoff, you're going, Quinn Ewers is going to have to show me something. That Sark's offense is going to have to show me something, because the games leading up to this, even going back to the SEC title game, they haven't shown it. They have all the potential to do it, just haven't shown it. So Texas, figure it out. Otherwise, you're going home. Boise State, Penn State. I have to admit, I did not watch a lot of this game. I kept an eye on it because I did have a parlay which did not hit. But Drew Aller, 13-25, 171 yards and 3 touchdown passes. Allen had 17 carries for 134 yards. Man, Tyler Warren is an absolute beast. 6 catches, 63 yards, 2 touchdowns. You go to the flip side of Boise. Obviously, the main focal point in this offense is Ashton Genty. 30 carries, 104 yards, kept out of the end zone. And that was basically where everyone was hung up. They're like, all right, dude, you were second in the Heisman. A lot of folks thought you should have won the Heisman. And you put up 104 yards. Now, I'm not going to hold that against him at all. This Penn State defense is legit. Now, there were a lot of people picking Boise just because of the simple fact that Penn State has not won the big one. They always lose the big one. Excuse me. So, big shout out to Penn State. You won a game that you were supposed to. You were over a 10-point favorite. Or excuse me, I believe a 7.5-point favorite. So thank you for covering. But this was a game you should have won, and you did. It was 17-7 at half, and it was basically over. So this was, this started out the second round. After the first round was nothing but blowouts, we continued to have the blowout narrative. And like I said, the very next day was that blowout thing was nipped right in the bud very quickly. So the games are getting better and better. But like I said, this whole thing would have been, this whole game would have not gone this way had it been seeded correctly. I'm going to keep going back to that because I honestly think that is exactly what needs to happen. We would see these teams like Boise State, even though they won their conference, they were the third highest ranked conference champion. I get that. They in this format deserved the bye, but in a normal format that makes sense, they would not have had a bye. So I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. So let's talk about Notre Dame, Georgia. Notre Dame, Georgia. The game that got moved. The game that got moved to Friday. I believe it's Friday, Thursday or Friday. It's whenever you get the holidays in the middle of the week. I have no idea what week it is or what day it is. This was, for those of you, I mean, this is something that, you know, is not a secret. I born and raised Notre Dame fan, have been my whole life. So going into this game, I was anxious. I was nervous. I was just ready for that letdown once again. And the score doesn't shock me. We have two extremely good defenses going at each other. And for the Georgia folks that are just going to come at me like, well, of course Notre Dame won. We didn't have a starting quarterback, you fuckhead. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. If you look up and down our roster of all the players, starters that we've lost, Jeremiah Love wasn't healthy. He only had 19 yards rushing. He wasn't healthy. He even went out of the game at one point. We haven't had our number one corner for the vast majority of the season in Morrison. Every team has injuries. And you know what? Those guys, they didn't come back for this game. So for your quarterback to be out for this game, I don't want to hear it. And your quarterback is not the reason why you lost this game, Georgia fans. They are not the reason you lost this game. You lost this game because your left tackle couldn't block anybody. And when the Notre Dame line got into the backfield, they weren't only sacking Stockton, they were, I mean, let's see. All right. They had 4 sacks and 9 tackles for loss. 9 tackles for loss. So ultimately, 13 plays that you guys ran, you got negative yards. And in a game that's this close in scoring, that's going to be one of the main deciding factors. Add on to that the 3 turnovers. 3 turnovers that Notre Dame capitalized on big time. Big time. If you look at the waning seconds of the going into halftime, it was 6-3. They sacked Stockton, and one play later, boom, touchdown. It's 13-3 going into half. Going into half. And I'm like, oh shit. All right, now, and I'm at this point, I'm starting to believe. I'm starting to believe that, oh my gosh, we can actually do this. We can actually do this. We come out of halftime. 98-yard touchdown kickoff return. And at this point, I'm sitting there, I'm on the edge of my seat, not believing what I'm seeing. Because in the 44 years that I've been alive, this Notre Dame team has won the national championship once, and I was 8 years old. So do I remember the whole season? No. Do I remember the national title game? Yes, I do. I do remember that. But ever since then, I'm pretty sure we have not won a New Year's Six bowl game. So now we're on the edge of, on the verge of nearly ending that quote unquote curse and moving on to the semifinals of the college football playoff to face Penn State. So I'm absolutely beside myself. Absolutely beside myself. Georgia scores in the third quarter, and then the Notre Dame defense keeps that Georgia offense out of the end zone in the fourth quarter. Notre Dame adds a field goal. Now there is a huge controversy, I guess you could say, on the fourth down play where Notre Dame brings their punt unit out, runs all those guys out or off the field, brings the offense back on, get the offsides from Georgia. And there's so many people that they're watching the replay saying the wide receiver for Notre Dame didn't set. He was moving. That should have been a false start. And you're right, but it wasn't called. Furthermore, if you rewind back in that game, Riley Leonard breaks a run and it's within the 20, and there's a face mask where his head is turned basically all the way around, and that's not called either. That's not called either. That would have led to a Notre Dame touchdown. This, or at least a field goal. This quote unquote missed call, all it did was eat time. There was not, they ended up punting at the end of that drive. Granted, a 7-minute drive, but that play right there did not define the game. In my honest opinion, the referees were completely Georgia biased. And one could argue that at least the first, if not both, of the running into the kicker fouls that were called on the very first possession by the same kid should have been 15 yards rather than 5 yards each. Okay, I get that. And for the Georgia fans that are just clamoring up and down, that old buddy that was on the sideline that the official ran into, we're up in arms that was actually a penalty. No shit. That's why that white line is there. And normally when you're not playing, you're not that close to the field. And I'm not going to say the kid's name because ESPN they had him on camera way too much. And somehow his Twitter got on my timeline and I'm like, oh shit. And then he tries to defend what he did. And it's like, no, brother, stop it. Let resting dogs lie. Just no. And what was that, a defining moment of the game? It was a turning point. It was definitely a turning point. I mean, that you're looking at first and 10 from the 11 to now we're back on the 26, and I believe Georgia had to kick a field goal. So yes, it was a very it was a very telling part of the game. Did it lose the game for Georgia? No. And I'm going to drive this point home. The defensive line for Notre Dame won the game for them. Between them and Riley Leonard, they won that game. The vast majority of that Notre Dame defensive line lived in Georgia's backfield. I feel bad for the left tackle for Georgia. He ended up spending most of the fourth quarter on the bench, and there was a replacement because he couldn't get the job done. Whether that, I couldn't tell you if that was, his fault for him sucking or just being overpowered by Notre Dame's defensive line. And I'll circle the wagon back here a little bit. Gunnar Stockton did not lose this game. He was 20 of 32 for 234 yards and a touchdown. Let's see here. Those are mostly sacks, but I'm not so sure that Carson Beck would have done much better. Thoroughly and honestly, I'm not so sure he would have done much better. And it's not because Stockton's better than Beck. I'm just saying, even if Carson Beck's back there, that same offensive line is still in front of him. So it is what it is. And then there was a couple huge drops that, the drops have been plaguing Georgia all year long. So it is what it is. It is what it is. But I do have some cool tweets here, and this is going to sound a lot like bashing Brian Kelly, but it kind of is. But my point into these tweets it just brings home the fact that it wasn't the situation why Brian Kelly couldn't win at Notre Dame. This is from Opastats on Twitter. Notre Dame is the first team ever to beat an AP-ranked opponent in 6 different months in the same season. Beat number 20 Texas A&M in August to start the season off. Beat number 15 Louisville in September. Beat number 24 Navy in October. Beat number 18 Navy or Army in November. Beat number 9 Indiana in December, and beat number 2 Georgia in January. That's pretty cool. First team ever. And yes, I know with the excuse me, with the playoff format, that gives Notre Dame the ability to beat teams in December and January. I get that point. Before we get too far into this, we did have a comment here that I did want to highlight from B82. Play like a champion today. You know it. All day, every day. But here's one of those tweets that kind of puts Brian Kelly's situation in perspective here. And like I said, I'm not trying to... Excuse me. This is not crybaby bullshit. This isn't, get this bum out of here. It puts things into perspective. This is from Clay Travis, at Clay Travis. Notre Dame, the team Brian Kelly left behind because he didn't believe he could win the big game there, has just won a bigger game in the state of Louisiana than he has in 3 years at LSU. Okay, yeah, that one was a shot. I'll admit it, that one was a shot. But this one really isn't. This is from Paul Hembo over from ESPN. Marcus Freeman has more wins versus ranked SEC teams this season, 2, than Brian Kelly does, 1. Excuse me. I had a tickle in my throat. So and believe me, there were many other tweets that I could have picked out to kind of highlight this, but those were the 2 that seemed to me the less like, crybaby, go get the hell out of here. We're better off. Brian Kelly leaving was the best thing that ever happened to Notre Dame. No, Brian Kelly hiring Marcus Freeman was the best thing that ever happened to Notre Dame. Just him leaving kind of opened the door for everything. But it is what it is. It is what it is. We're past Kelly now. We can kind of get that out of the way because Marcus Freeman has won more big games in 3 years than Kelly did his whole tenure. So it is what it is. So let's take a look at the next round. Okay. I don't know why I'm looking for more than 2 games. It's like, hold on, this can't be the right screen. All right, Thursday we have Notre Dame, Penn State. Notre Dame is a 1.5 favorite. 1.5 favorite. Over under set at 46.5. Ohio State, Texas. Ohio State is a 5.5 point favorite. Over under 53.5. Now on DraftKings, they do give you this, and I believe this is new this year, the hypothetical tab. Hypothetical games, void if doesn't take place. So you can actually go put these bets on DraftKings, or excuse me, on FanDuel right now. Hashtag not sponsored, want to be sponsored. If we have a Penn State, Texas final game, Texas will be a 2.5 point favorite. If we have a Notre Dame, Texas, it'll be a 2.5 point Texas favored. Texas would be favored by 2.5. Use your words, Ryan. An Ohio State, Penn State rematch. Ohio State would be a 7.5 point favorite. And a Ohio State, Notre Dame, Ohio State would be a 7 point favorite. And all of the over and unders are pretty much 49.5, except for Ohio State, Notre Dame. They have that set at 48.5. So if you want to, take a stroll down that's where you can find that. And let's take a peek at the national odds, or the national championship odds. Ohio State minus 110, Notre Dame plus 400, Texas plus 410, and Penn State plus 500. So that's kind of what we got going on right now in the betting world 2K crew. So here are my picks for both games. Pretty much Notre Dame, Penn State, kind of a pick 'em, 1.5 points. Give me the Irish and 46. I'm going to go over the 46.5, even though that is not a lot of points, but give me the over. In the Ohio State-Texas game, I'm riding Ohio State and the over. I'm not going to say that. I mean, granted, Texas defense seems to be on paper better than Oregon's, but Texas isn't going to get blown out in this one. I do think it's a 2-score game with Ohio State on top. But yeah, give me Ohio State and the over. This Ohio State team, like I said, is a wagon, is an absolute wagon. And last week, or excuse me, 2 weeks ago, I played 2K's video about him saying this team on paper is the best team in the country. And when he said that, and I posted that video, it's our second. No, it is our first. That video has more views on TikTok than any other video that we have. And no, second most, sorry. But yeah, there was so many people ripping 2K is a new ass. And looks like he's right. It looks like he's right. Wide receiver room, packed. Running back room, packed. Probably have the best defensive player in the country. I'm not going to say the quarterback room is packed, but gets the job done. Texas, like I said, Texas's defense, I believe, is better than Oregon's. I think they're going to give Ohio. They're going to slow down that offense more than Oregon did. However, I still think that passing attack and rushing attack, when you have a two-headed monster in the backfield and pretty much all three receivers are going to be NFL wide receivers, that's hard to match up with. It's hard to match up with. And Notre Dame, Penn State, what worries me about Notre Dame is this. It's not the defense. It's not the fact that Riley Leonard hasn't thrown over 300 yards in a game, or if he has, very few and far between. What scares me is that to win the last 3 games, they've had to have a miraculous play. If you rewind back to the USC game, they had 2, not 1, but 2 pick sixes that went for over 98 yards. Indiana, Love has a 98-yard rush, a 98-yard rushing touchdown. And against Georgia, we have the 98-yard kickoff return. I'm not saying that the well's going to run dry for these at some point, but the likelihood of scoring an 80 or 90-yard touchdown is not that common. And we seem to be making it very, very common. I will say, however, that there will be a special teams play in this game that Notre Dame does that will define the game. This is going to be 7 to 10 points. Wouldn't shock me if it was a 3-point game. But if Notre Dame's defense can get after that Georgia offense, Drew Aller's going to have a long day. The only thing that scares me is that tight end is a matchup nightmare. Possibly the best tight end in the country. Dude lines up in the backfield. He lines up, he blocks, he catches, he's out wide, he's in close. I've even seen him throw the ball. He was a quarterback in high school. Can you imagine that giant as a quarterback in high school, and you're a linebacker trying to tackle him? No, get out of here with that. Even on the college level, we see college guys have problems bringing this dude down. But we saw that even in a blowout, Drew Aller had 170 yards passing. And I think to beat Notre Dame, he's going to have to put up 300. Does he have the wide receivers to get the separation they need? I don't know. I don't think so. And all year, Notre Dame and Penn State have drawn a very good comparison to one another. And a lot of people have said that Notre Dame is a better version of Penn State. Add to that, and I think in this matchup, Notre Dame has all of the momentum. All of the momentum. We're being told that Jeremiah Love is progressing to be healthy for this game. And it blows my mind. Like I said, all of these people saying Carson Beck that wasn't playing, that's the reason that Notre Dame beat Penn State. Not buying that at all. At all. Not buying it at all. Let's take a quick peek here at this Lions game. So I haven't been really keeping up on it here. All right. What do we got for a score? 7-0 Detroit. Looking good. All right. Which I had a very good feeling that either this would be an extremely watched live show or no one would watch it all. And I think I've seen 4 or 5 people trickle in here, at least on the away from the TikTok side. So for those of you that did stop in and say hi, thank you so much. And for those of you that were over on TikTok, thank you so much. And for those of you over on the audio side, if you have time, join us live. Join us live. It's always better live. It's always better live. And before we get out of here, I did want to say something, which I don't know. I can't remember if I addressed this 2 weeks ago, but maybe I did. If not, gonna bring it home again. On the video that I said there should not be a 3-loss team in this college football playoff, and I still stand by that. For those of you that were commenting that, well, Clemson got in. Clemson won their fucking conference. Point blank, period. Point blank, period. And in the rules of this tournament, if you win, whoever wins the ACC gets an automatic, not only an automatic bye, but an automatic bid, an automatic bye, which I know I talked about 2 weeks ago with these buys need to be figured out differently. But Clemson won their conference championship. Clemson won. Not SMU. Clemson. If SMU would have won, then the conversation I could have listened to keeping Clemson out of the playoff and bring in Alabama, Ole Miss, South Carolina, one of those 3-loss teams. Then we could entertain that conversation. But as it sits this year, there is not an argument that I will even accept, regardless of the outcomes we've seen so far, that any of those 3-loss SEC teams deserve to be in over any of the teams. Any of the teams. Do I think that will be addressed, next year? I certainly do. And the Lions get a big goal line stand. Attaboy, Detroit. And it seems like most of my friends list is at this game. So if my friends see this and they want to donate something to the studio to hang, we could make some room. Obviously, we have room. But 2K crew, it's good to get back in the saddle with you guys and gals again. Next week, 2Ks will be joining us, and I'm super stoked for that because we're going to continue. We're going to break down both games, Thursday and Friday, and get into our talk about the national title. And we'll probably talk some NFL because it'll be the first week of the NFL playoffs. So I'm super stoked for that. And keep an eye out because, like I said, we've got a pretty cool guest lined up. We just need to get our schedules need to match up so where he has time, we have time, and he will be in studio. in studio. So I'm really stoked for that. So 2K crew, I'll get you out of here on that. We'll see you next week. And as always, Jim Rome, we're coming for you.